President Donald Trump's Big Beautiful Bill, the centerpiece of his second-term agenda, now faces its toughest challenge yet, not from Democrats but from within the president's own party. Despite Republican control of both chambers of Congress, deep internal rifts threaten to derail the proposed tax legislation that Trump once promised would be the most transformative overhaul in a generation. In the Senate, debate has begun under a cloud of uncertainty. Republicans hold only a slim majority, and their unity is cracking. Lawmakers from various factions are pulling the bill in different directions. Some insist on deeper spending cuts. Others demand protections for programs like Medicaid. Still others worry the bill favors the rich while leaving working-class Americans behind. Even Trump's former advisor, tech billionaire Elon Musk, has stepped into the fray, and not in support. Musk, once seen as a business ally of the president, publicly called for lawmakers to kill the bill entirely. His criticism echoed growing concerns that the bill's benefits skew too heavily toward corporations and the top 1%, while placing undue burdens on public programs millions rely upon. The timing could not be worse for Trump. The July 4th deadline looms, a symbolic date chosen by Republicans to celebrate legislative success and national pride. But instead of fireworks, GOP leaders face gridlock. They insist they can still push the bill across the finish line, yet their confidence seems increasingly out of step with the mood in their own caucus. Senate Majority Leader John Thune acknowledged the challenge, telling reporters, "We're anxious to get to work on it," even as critics grow louder. His words underscored both the urgency and the anxiety hanging over the Capitol. At the heart of the dispute is the bill's fundamental structure: large tax cuts for corporations and high-income earners, partially offset by reductions in federal spending, including Medicaid. That formula has long been a tough sell, but in an election year and after years of growing economic inequality, it's now proving almost toxic. Moderate Republicans worry about the optics of slashing health care to fund tax breaks. They fear backlash from constituents who depend on Medicaid and other public programs. In states with large rural or aging populations, those cuts hit especially hard, and voters are paying attention. On the other side, fiscal conservatives say the bill doesn't cut enough. They argue that the national debt is already dangerously high, and adding more without deeper offsets is reckless. For them, the bill is a missed opportunity to rein in the size of government. Caught in the middle are party leaders trying to balance competing demands while fending off a unified Democratic opposition. Not a single Democrat has signaled support for the bill, and few are likely to break ranks. Trump's unpopularity among their voters gives them little political incentive to help him score a legislative victory. Trump, for his part, has remained publicly optimistic. At rallies and in press statements, he touts the bill as a win for American families, claiming it will boost jobs, wages, and economic growth. He brushes off critics as naysayers and insists the American people are on his side. Behind the scenes, though, the administration is reportedly scrambling to shore up votes. Vice President Mike Pence has been dispatched to Capitol Hill for private meetings. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin has been making calls. White House staff are working overtime to spin the narrative and pressure reluctant senators. Yet the bill's path remains murky. Several key Republican senators, including Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, Susan Collins of Maine, and Mitt Romney of Utah, have expressed concerns. Some cite Medicaid cuts. Others question whether the promised economic growth will ever materialize. Musk's intervention added a new layer of complexity. Once viewed as a pragmatic partner in areas like energy and technology, his public criticism of the bill caught many in Washington off guard. "This tax plan is a giveaway to the rich at the expense of the middle class," he said in a social media post that went viral. That message struck a chord with voters across party lines, especially younger Americans already skeptical of Washington's ability to address their concerns. Musk's massive following and cultural influence could shift public sentiment even further against the bill. Meanwhile, House Republicans, who already passed a version of the bill, are watching the Senate closely. Any changes made in the upper chamber would need to be reconciled before final passage, and some House members have warned they won't accept significant alterations. That dynamic creates a high-stakes game of political chicken. If Senate Republicans water down the bill too much to attract moderates, they risk losing support in the House. If they don't, they may not get enough votes in the Senate to pass it at all. Democrats, sensing opportunity, are hammering the GOP on the bill's perceived flaws. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer called it a cruel and unnecessary piece of legislation, accusing Republicans of trying to rush through a bill without fully considering its consequences. Outside groups have also mobilized. Advocacy organizations, healthcare unions, and think tanks have launched ad campaigns targeting vulnerable Republicans. Town hall meetings across the country have seen fierce pushback from constituents worried about losing coverage or seeing their taxes go up. Yet despite all this, Trump remains focused on delivering a legislative win. After years of failed efforts to repeal and replace Obamacare, and with immigration reform stalled, the tax bill has become a must-pass measure for his administration's credibility. Failure could be politically catastrophic. Trump has tied his legacy to big promises and bold moves. Letting his signature legislation die at the hands of his own party would fuel the narrative that he can't govern, a narrative Democrats would eagerly use in upcoming elections. But going big, as Trump often says, carries its own risks. Sweeping reforms attract sweeping opposition. As history has shown, the larger the legislation, the more likely it is to collapse under its own weight. That reality is playing out now in real time. With every new amendment, every public comment, and every poll showing declining support, the bill looks less like a sure thing and more like a political quagmire. What began as a celebration of conservative principles, lower taxes, smaller government, stronger business incentives, has turned into a struggle for consensus. And with the clock ticking, the window for success is rapidly narrowing. Republicans know the stakes. Some are urging party unity above all else. Others refuse to compromise their principles for political expediency. That tension, more than any Democrat objection or Musk tweet, may ultimately decide the bill's fate. The weeks ahead will be critical. Behind closed doors, negotiations will intensify. Public messaging will shift. Allies will be courted. Critics will be lobbied. In the end, Trump's biggest challenge may not be the opposition across the aisle, but the resistance within his own ranks. If he can't unite his party, the big beautiful bill may never become law. And that failure could cast a long shadow over the rest of his presidency.